Wow, 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 Joanna. A fountain of knowledge, and I have to say it's amazing to see a lady in the space having so much knowledge. And why do I say this? Today is the first day of the Women's History Month, and I'm very, very honored and proud to welcome my panelists, Daniela Barbosa, Elke Karskens, Silvia Mogas, and Vinita Rathi. Welcome, ladies. A ladies' panel.
Great.
Ladies, 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 what did we hear? Amazing. We will define the DeFi space. Maybe a quick intro from you all. Maybe Daniela, if you want to start.
Sure. Well, welcome everyone. I'm very excited to be on the stage here with all of us. My name is Daniela Barbosa. I am the General Manager for Blockchain and Identity Open Source Projects at the Linux Foundation. The Linux Foundation for the last 20 years has been building open source code projects across all industries, including the telecom industry. In 2016, we formed the Hyperledger project. At the time, it was a project. And today, I serve as the executive director for the Hyperledger Foundation. And we have 16 different open source projects and global communities working on our code bases, and really a spectrum of blockchain and blockchain-related technologies, from permissioned blockchain ledgers to permissionless execution clients like on the Ethereum mainnet. So it's really exciting to be here today to talk about DeFi.
Thank you very much, Daniela. Elke.
Great, I'm next. Nice to see that so many of you were able to make it. My name is Elke Karskens. I'm the country director for Coinbase in the UK. For those of you that might be a bit less familiar with Coinbase, we're an American exchange, publicly listed. We've been around for about 10 years. And hopefully one of the more known players within this space. We're obviously centralized, so it's interesting to hear Johanna earlier talk as well about the centralized players within this space. But yeah, really looking forward to this conversation. And yeah, indeed spectacular to see a women-only panel on this topic.
Welcome, Elke. Vinita.
So my name is Vinita, and I run a technology consultancy company. We have close to about 350 people. We specialize in financial services, largely, but then we also work in fantasy sports and hospitality. From my perspective, I think today's day is awesome. We get to sit on a panel that's all women. We are not talking about women issues. We're talking about core engineering, topic. And lastly, today is the day when my company has opened its IPO. So, it's like truly special day for me. So thank you for having me.
Thank you for being on the panel. Silvia.
So it's a pleasure to be here today and share this panel with these amazing ladies, as well as great to have all the women in the panel. Well, my name is Silvia. I'm from Barcelona. I lived abroad many years, and it was when I was in Singapore when I was in touch with blockchain. And when I came back home, I decided to build my agency. I have a marketing agency for blockchain projects. We help companies to go from Web 2 to Web 3, from the strategy and also for the marketing. Also, I am the former CMO of MWC, a DeFi company in the supply chain. And also, I used to be the head of marketing for Fair Labs, a marketplace of NFTs.
Thank you, Silvia. Awesome. So we want to speak about DeFi opportunities and, of course, challenges. It's not only opportunities. But I think, first of all, let's try to find out, or the definition. Let's define DeFi. Maybe, Daniela, you want to start?
Sure. I think we saw a couple of definitions what DeFi is, but I want to make it very simple. So when there's three components for DeFi. First is the blockchain, so the distributed ledger and an immutable ledger. The second is smart contracts, which is executable code that works in smart contracts. And the third is the governance of the blockchain. So how is that blockchain governed? And there's really different approaches depending on what blockchain you use and what governance models you have. And I think Telefonica spoke to that for a bit. When you think about DeFi, I like to see there's like a simple three-step test whether something is DeFi. Number one is the user in control of their assets? If they are, it might be a DeFi application. If they aren't, Perhaps it's a centralized application that brings a lot of value to the market, to the user, and to the financial markets for sure. So first step number one, does the user have full control of their assets? Step number two is execution of those transactions. If an entity or a person entity, can make a decision about that transaction, and I could say, nope, I'm not going to process this transaction, but I'm going to process that transaction. If there is that element of it, it is not DeFi. Once a bet, it could be something else that uses blockchain, it uses smart contracts, and it has blockchain governance, but it's not DeFi. And the third thing is the governance of the blockchain itself. And if there is an entity, once again, that can change the rules of how that blockchain is governed, then you're not talking about a DeFi solution. It could be centralized financed, it could be other types of blockchain solutions, it can be quite valuable for the users and the different industries, but it's not DeFi. So the technologies are the same. How they're applied and the rules, that simple three-step rule, is how I define what DeFi is.
Thank you for making this clear definition and thinking about this definition of DeFi and if there is an entity that can change anything in the rule. Why would you say, perhaps one for Elke, why would you say is decentralization so necessary in the finance industry?
Yeah, no, I'm very happy to talk about that. And I like the three-step model. I'm going to start using that moving forward. I think to answer that question, like, is it truly necessary or not? I think maybe we need to look at like what the financial world looks like today, right? Centralized finance really is the system that governs all of the different financial institutions that play within this space. And ultimately the ones that are holding the user's funds, like banks, for example. And when a user is making a transaction, that transaction is being accommodated by all of these different intermediaries within that space. And they all take a little bit of a micro-cut across the board. I actually was reading, as I was preparing, obviously, for some of the questions that you're about to ask, I came across a study from FCDNI. Do not ask me what that stands for. But basically, it said that in the US, so this is the US, more than 5% of people are unbanked right now. And that's in a very, very developed market. So just take that out of perspective into more emerging and developed markets. There are billions of people out there that are currently banked. And the reason for that is because they cannot they don't have the ability for the minimum payment requirements. They can't pay for the fees. And also there's distrust with very traditional institutions. And that makes the centralized financial system very exclusive. It's not inclusive at all. So in order to create a system that gives people perhaps that need access to savings, to new payment infrastructures, to insurance, to credit, those that need that more, it makes it absolutely impossible. So fundamentally the way centralized finance is set up today is not inclusive, which therefore brings me to decentralized finance. It is completely the opposite. Is it an alternative system that inherently is open, it's transparent, it is fast, it is, well, it's reliable. Wherever anybody is in the world, as long as you have an internet connection, you can create your self-hosted wallet. When you want to make a transfer or do anything within this space, you can do that, which really creates an environment where, yeah, everybody has access to financial tools that can really help improve their liveliness and ability across the board. So I guess that's a really long-winded way of giving you the answer. Yes, decentralized finance is very important.
Yes, Elke, I think it's very needed, and thank you for mentioning the inclusion into the financial space. But we can't forget as well that there are around 4 billion people still without internet. So in
True.
order to get there, a lot of infrastructure needs to be done. But that is definitely the way how the space is evolving to bank the unbanked. So I think that's a very, very important part. What has been created in the last years? We are talking about DeFi for quite a while now, for a few years. Which projects, what has been created in the DeFi space, and what challenges has the DeFi space encountered? Maybe Vinita, you want to answer.
Yeah. And I actually wanted to go back to the previous question for a second. I mean, while the premise of blockchain is transparency and inclusivity, right? And I know all the transactions on the blockchain are open out there, right, in public. Anybody can go and read those transactions. But at least from my perspective, they are still opaque for the retail or for a layman, because you can't really expect them to have a testnet up and running and understand a complex piece of code, So even though the premise is really the transparency, but there is a way to go. And you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
DeFi is absolutely way to go, but I think there's going to be a combination of centralized and decentralized to solve this real
100%.
problem that we face today. So going back to the actual question that you asked me, see, crypto has become part of vernacular now, right? And if you see the history, Nick in 1996 has actually launched the concept of smart contract as a steps to execute, right? In 2012, Vitalik actually used that concept and applied that on Bitcoin and created Ethereum. 2018 is when we saw first robust DEX that came out, which was Uniswap, right? So the space has definitely evolved. We are seeing several use cases of lending, borrowing, yield farming. We are seeing even tokens that's actually tracking a security that's listed on National Stock Exchange, right? So from that perspective, there are so many use cases. And considering the infancy stage of blockchain, that actually powers the scripting that goes behind the smart contract, I really feel that the growth that DeFi has in general is quite impressive. Now, for it to actually go to a real mass adoption, I think there are a lot of things that needs to be done, but there are projects that demonstrate scalability. There are projects that demonstrate execution, at a fast pace. There are projects that actually talks about customization and, a bespoke behavior of smart contracts. However, all of this for actually to act and happen, for blockchain to really, say that we don't require intermediaries, right? There has to be regulations, And so, while we have come a long way, while I see, a lot of potential, there are projects out there that are really making difference. And, investing is at the core of DeFi's, I can't really see a use case of DeFi if, in some shape and format, there is no investing around it.
So taking this point of the use cases that are around, and we at FTI are working on quite a few use cases, monetizing and bringing DeFi to more an inclusive and diverse space. This is what we have to say, and it's lovely to say it today. In a more diverse space, perhaps would you know any successful projects that are out now, Sylvia? Any projects that you think, wow, these are projects of the future, this has a long run?
Well, at this moment, there are a lot of projects that they are disrupting the industry. So everyone is building. Last year was a little bit tricky year, so everyone started to build new projects. So I know, for example, DeFi-ning. I met them last week in the European Blockchain Conference. And what they are doing is they spotted that SMEs, they have difficulties to find financing, and also it's very expensive for them. And also they found out that these are tradified, so traditional finance. So, and they found out also that crypto investors are looking as well new ways to invest. So what they did is in the platform, they do a match depending on the risk of the SMEs they have and the risk the investor wants to have. They do that match and they do this business. This is the business model. Also, there is another project that it's called Bampa. Bampa, what it does is price protection. So it has also a very good onboard for the customer. So you go there, you can say, okay, I want to have this risk, I want to put this amount in this time, and then you just have to put the deposit, and then you are going never to lose more than you are assuming. So this is as well a very good model for people who is not in Web3 and are scared to invest. So at least they know, okay, I'm going to start, I'm going to try to invest, and at least I know that I'm not going to have losses. Also, there is another project this is based in New York. It's a wallet. It's a non-custodial wallet. You can swap, you can trade, but the peculiarity is they have NFTs. So each week they have a new NFT. If you go to their app, you have a new NFT. Also, they are introducing to the metaverse, and they have done in the metaverse a customer journey that you are doing different goals. And when you reach some goal, you get as well an NFT. So it's a very good gamification as well for the metaverse and the DeFi company.
Yeah, thank you, Sylvia. You just mentioned, and very true, we had quite a bumpy year behind us. And it's a difficult time then to state how is DeFi doing? How is DeFi evolving? And which is the current state of DeFi? And why is open source so important in this space? Maybe Daniela.
Yeah. It has been bumpy, but it's always a bumpy road when new technologies happen and regulation starts making play and stupid people do stupid things, right? And if you think about it, just think about any other technology and innovation out there. There's always been a community of startups and entrepreneurs who lead the way. And if you think, I use this statistic all the time and people will talk to me or like, stop saying it, but it's true. 9 out of 10 startups fail. So when you look around the DeFi, community and you see the failures and people are just not able to get market traction, that's perfectly normal, and that's actually good because that's how we learn how to do better. How do we build bigger, and how do we build something that's better than what we've built before, which is, I think, really one of the key critical things and why I got involved in blockchain in 2016, because I truly believe that the technology, even though there's a lot of, well, you should do this, and it's public versus private, and the technology actually has a lot of impact that it can do to society. So it's bumpy. Enjoy the ride. Some people like the bumpy rides, but ultimately we're going to come out of this much better and bigger. I think when you think about this technology, and blockchain from the start has been about trust, right? And we talk about trust a lot, and digital trust. And one of the things that open source allows for technology is that people can see how the code is built. The people can collaborate on the code, meaning that when you work together, right, when you're building something together, you're going to move it faster, right? And you can get the right people involved in the things that they're experts on. So when you think about blockchain, open source, being able to look at the code and trust that the code, how it was written, who writes it, and basically be able to do what you need to do with it is really important. And everything that is blockchain related has open source code at its core. And I think because it's about trust, it is critical to do that. Whether it's the Linux Foundation or other open source foundations, if you look at the developers are the ones that are really creating our future infrastructure for financial services, specifically from a DeFi perspective.
Well, it's so true that we have to look at the developers. You always say there's always a journey and a bumpy ride. I'm in the crypto space since end of 2011. I passed quite a few bumpy rides, and it's always like a wave, and it comes and goes. And talking about last year and everything what happened, FTI is involved in all the bankruptcies that are known in the news. In the last year, and it was a quite interesting time to see everything what happens. Elke, maybe you from Coinbase.
Yeah.
What impact did bankruptcies and the whole domino effect?
Yeah,
we could say.
It's definitely been an interesting ride. I've been at Coinbase now for a year, and yeah, things started off. Well, things look very different now than they started off, and I don't want to speak on anybody else's behalf, but it's bumpy. I am definitely wearing my seatbelt. Yeah, and listen, in all honesty, like the entire industry got a black eye, maybe even two, right? Trust, as you mentioned, trust has been harmed. And it very much actually underpins the need for regulation, for guardrails to be in place, for this technology ultimately flourish, because consumer protection is key. So at Coinbase, we're very, very focused on rebuilding trust right now. We're working in close partnership, and actually we've always have, with regulators, policymakers, to ensure that the regulatory frameworks that are being developed obviously have consumer protection at its heart, but that it does leave enough space for innovation and, as I said, 30 seconds ago, for ultimately this technology to truly flourish. We are still heads down in building innovative products, ensuring that we have the smoothest and the best experience for consumers to ramp into crypto. But only last week we actually launched an Ethereum Layer 2 network called Base, which also really hopefully brings the ability for more developers safely to come into this space to actually build in a secure and safe way on top of that as well. And as I mentioned, regulation is key and is ultimately what is going to help hopefully shape this industry in a meaningful way. I think that's where I'm going to leave it.
Taking this on, and taking this on what you just said, what needs to happen in terms of regulation in order to bring it forward? What do regulators have to do? What do they have to look at in order to bring the space into a more secure space that people can trust?
Well, I think... can I still answer?
Yes.
No, totally.
Yes, please, Elke.
I think what we would love to see is for like-minded countries to really come together and work with the industries, as well as associations like Crypto UK, spectacular party and partner for us in the UK as well. Again, to help develop these frameworks, for them to provide a lot of clarity, work with us, so that organizations like ours can help inform what a trustworthy future looks like and rebuild that. So very much for collaboration from a regulatory perspective, to work with our industries to help shape what the future can look like without us being completely locked back in. Like, it wouldn't be fair to any of us if we're going to be shoehorned into the regulations that exist for traditional finance right now. Like, we can't flourish as part of that. So very much, hopefully a mindset of like, let's build a safe future, let's do it together.
Yeah, I think as well there is a point that regulators need to understand the space.
Of course, and it's complex.
In order to, it is a complex space, and I think they need to listen to the developers, to the peers in the space in order to regulate in an appropriate way. But taking this on with centralized exchanges, and then we have the decentralized exchanges as well, where would you see them? Where would you see how they will evolve?
So I want to go back to the previous question again. See, I think more than anything else, why we need regulation in this space is for the recognition, So if regulators come in and if they bring in conformity to the system, and they, the first thing that we get is the digital assets gets recognized, right? And then it also protects that layman investor who's gonna invest into this crypto market, but not gonna get burned by it, right? Because right now you see so many DeFis out there that just says, there is a risk involved, and that's it, And then you just leave it to the individual to decide how much risk it is, and what's going to happen to the fund that I invest. And then you just leave it out there in open for every DeFi to make their own judgments, to make their own, decisions on what they want to disclose and what they don't want to disclose, right? So I think the step that we are taking, like what MICA is doing, what UK is doing, what SEC authorities are doing, I think it's the right step in the right direction. However, they have to really comply with the developers, because that's the premise of blockchain. It's open source. It's right out there. You can't really regulate it. It's autonomous. Yes. So let's see where the balance is. Going back to sex versus Texas, right? Centralized exchanges versus decentralized exchanges. See, in my opinion, centralized exchanges were anyways innovation, crypto centralized exchanges, right? If you look at the core of the exchange, there are three things. There is order book, there is a fund management, and then there is an actual transaction that takes place. Traditionally, it has taken like T+2 as a settlement, time. And that has given so much power to these financial institutes, because for these 3 days, they were keeping funds with them system, right? And it was a lot of power, and the whole system was just so opaque. I think centralized exchanges like Binance, like Coinbase, have actually given people the power, plus they are able to execute the trade pretty much real time, if not real time. However, the custodian scheme still remains the same with centralized exchanges, and which is why you have to do proof of reserves and whatnot. I think Uniswap is one step ahead now, and where we are seeing a lot of liquidity, open order book, good scale, good scalability, and we are actually seeing transaction and people are participating. I think all we require is good UX, so that people don't have to struggle for an hour to figure out how to create my wallet, how to get my fiat currency, how to convert it into a Ether or whatever, and then do rest of the conversions.
Yes, Vinita, I think you're so right. Simplicity is just things that we need. User-friendly interface, this is what we need. We are running out of time, but I have two questions that I really want to get answered. They are very, very important for me and I think for the audience as well, and we don't speak so much about it. How will Web3 and DeFi impact privacy and security? Elke, you.
If I had the answer, I'd probably get paid a little bit more as well. I think the truth is it's a complicated space, and we're at the forefront of really trying to figure out what established privacy norms need to evolve into. There are a lot of contradictions right now. Think of GDPR, for example, right? Like, how can we give users access to their data when we don't actually know who they are? There's some very intellectual, complex pieces that have to be discussed and thought through. But things have been done before. I'm absolutely confident that we can be at that frontier of figuring out what that looks like, but it will take a while and it is complex. And I think it's okay to recognize that we're at that entry point right now. Yes.
I believe right assessments in privacy and security are needed that sometimes are just looked over. And just the last questions for the whole panel. Where do we see DeFi in the next 5 years? In 5 years' time, what would you say, Sylvia?
More adoption. So we need to fix the UX, definitely. It's a big stopover for people who are trying to get in. So we need to fix that, and we need as well to educate, to make them understand what is custodial, non-custodial, understand a little bit what is an asset. I think it's going in this path.
And maybe Daniela, if you want to...
Yeah, I think, usability is a huge issue that needs to be
Well.
tackled in the next 5 years. I think that communities, there's going to be certain communities that actually will flourish with DeFi applications and use cases, but we have to nail usability in place in order for it to move.
Can I do
Yes, of course, Vinita.
I think we have to reimagine the financial ecosystem, right? The traditional finance that we have. I think the world is going to be interconnected. All the economy is going to be interconnected. It's just that the DeFis have to solve that one single problem where how we can actually build that safeguard should things go wrong so that one economy doesn't impact another economy. If we have this in place, then I think we're going to just re-innovate the financial system that has existed for last 100 years.
I love it, interconnected. I think interoperability is one of the big topics, but I think this is for another day. Thank you very much, Daniela, Elke, Vinita, and Sylvia. A round of applause for our panelists. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
It's